Charles James Kirk, Arlington Heights, Illinois, October 14, 1993. Orem, Utah, September 10, 2025, was a political activist conservative American. He co-founded Turning Point USA, TPUSA, along with William T. Montgomery in 2012, and was a managing director of the organization. In 2018, he was included by Forbes magazine on the 30 Under 30 list in the law and politics category. He was born and raised in Arlington Heights and Prospect Heights, suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. In high school, he was active in politics, supporting Mark Kirk's campaign for the United States Senate and campaigning against price gouging in his school cafeteria. He briefly attended Harper College before dropping out to pursue political activism, influenced by Tea Party member Bill Montgomery. In 2012, he founded TPUSA, a conservative student organization that grew rapidly thanks to support from donors such as Foster Friess. As executive director of TPUSA, he expanded the organization's influence through initiatives such as a teacher's watch list and the school board list, while raising millions in donations. In 2019, he founded Turning Point Action, an advocacy organization, and later, with Pentecostal pastor Rob McCoy, formed Turning Point Faith, which aimed to mobilize faith communities around conservative issues. He hosted the Charlie Kirk Show, a conservative radio show. A key ally of Donald Trump, he publicly promoted conservative and pro-Trump causes, as well as COVID-19 misinformation, and denied the scientific consensus on climate change. He opposed gun control, and the Washington Post described him as one of the most prominent voices on the right in his later years. On September 10, 2025, he was shot in the neck at the age of 31, while speaking at a TPUSA event on the Utah Valley University, UVU campus, as part of his long-running public debates at higher education institutions across the United States. Minutes after the attack, a sniper was spotted in one of the buildings near the conference where Charlie was present. Education. He was a Christian evangelical. He was born on October 14, 1993, in Arlington Heights, a suburb of Chicago, and grew up near Prospect Heights, Illinois. As a teenager, he volunteered for the Senate campaign of Republican Mark Kirk, no relation. During high school, he wrote several essays for Breitbart News, in which he claimed that textbooks were left-wing biased. He later appeared as a guest on Fox News to discuss the matter. He claimed to have applied to do military service in the United States Army, but was not accepted. In 2015, he told The Atlantic magazine that he was taking online courses at King's College in New York. He said on Newsmax that he attended Harper College in Palatine, Illinois, but dropped out to work as a conservative political activist. Activism. For the 2016 election, he was a guest on Fox News, along with Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, and Laura Trump. In May 2019, he received an honorary degree from Liberty University, a private evangelical university. In July 2019, he was nominated as the president of Students for Trump, which was acquired by Turning Point Action. Students for Trump managed to rally 1 million students for the 2020 United States presidential election. He was invited to speak at the 2020 Republican National Convention. He spoke at the 2020 Student Action Summit, organized by Turning Point USA in Washington, D.C., in the District of Columbia. In 2021, he spoke at CPAC, a meeting organized by the American Conservative Union, held in Orlando, Florida. He was a member of the William F. Buckley Jr. Council of the Council for National Policy, CNP, a group that has served for decades as a hub for a national network of conservative activists and the donors who support them. According to the CNP's September 2020 membership directory leaked in February 2021. He was a spokesperson for CNP Action, the CNP's political arm. In March 2025, President Trump appointed him to the United States Air Force Academy Board of Visitors. Kirk's final political rally took place in Kentucky, where he appeared alongside Senate candidate Nate Morris. Political positions. Kirk's outspoken political activism has been met with criticism and controversy. His rhetoric has been described as divisive, racist, xenophobic, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic, and far-right by organizations that study hate speech, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Kirk disagreed with critics who claimed he created a toxic online environment, arguing that disagreement is a healthy part of our systems. Abortion. He strongly opposed abortion. In a debate organized by Jubilee Media, Kirk stated that abortion is murder and should be illegal. He also said he was not in favor of abortion in cases of rape, and that if his 10-year-old daughter were raped and became pregnant, he would force her to give birth. Right to bear arms and the Second Amendment. He was a gun owner and gun rights advocate. Following the February 2018 Parkland shooting, he spoke on behalf of the National Rifle Association in Parkland, Florida. A student had invited him to a pro-gun event at the school where the shooting occurred, but the event was canceled. He further stated that guns, armed guards, and gun detectors could be used to prevent school and campus shootings. 36. At an April 2023 Turning Point USA event in Salt Lake City, Utah, he said, "I think it's worth it to take, unfortunately, a cost of a few gun deaths every year to be able to have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights." Relationships and sexual anarchy. In October 2021, he stated on his podcast that Democrats wanted Americans to live where there is no cultural identity, where there is sexual anarchy, where private property is a thing of the past, and the ruling class controls everything. Following the backlash on social media, he posted a statement on the Claremont Institute website reaffirming and expanding on his claims. According to Media Matters, at the 2022 Pusey Young Women's Leadership Summit, he claimed that the biblical model women should follow in romantic relationships is a partner who is a protector and a leader, and at their core, the vast majority of you agree, and that if you want to meet conservative men who have their lives together, who aren't like woke beta men, start Turning Point USA chapter, you'll meet plenty of them. He argued that birth control causes women to become angry and bitter, which he argued fits with the political leanings of the Democratic Party. He also believed that medication messes up the female brain. Race. He claimed that the concept of white privilege is a myth and a racist idea. Kirk served on President Donald Trump's 1776 Commission, a response to the 1619 Project. Taking more far-right positions, he said that Democratic immigration policies were aimed at decreasing and reducing the white demographics in the United States. In October 2021, he began the Exposing Critical Racism tour at various universities and off-campus venues to combat racist theories on America's college campuses. He posted on Instagram in March 2024 that the Great Replacement is not a theory, it's a reality. Along with this statement, he shared a screenshot of a Fox News headline that read, 7.2 million illegals entered the U.S. under the Biden administration, more than the population of 36 states. African Americans. During the Minnesota leg of the tour on October 5, 2021, he called George Floyd a scoundrel and appeared to reference the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol by saying that if you dare walk into the U.S. Capitol building and take a selfie, you will be put in solitary confinement. Kirk promoted several debunked conspiracy theories about Floyd, including that he was illegally counterfeiting currency and that he once pointed a gun at a pregnant woman's stomach. On Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, Kirk repeatedly spread the false claim that the medical examiner who performed the autopsy declared Floyd dead from an overdose. Following a fact check by AFP, which found the doctor maintained classifying Floyd's death as a homicide, corrections were added to Kirk's social media posts. In a November 2021 Fox News article, Kirk wrote that he believed state power should be used to prevent teachers from teaching critical race theory to children. Directly confronting the left and promising to fight their illiberal ideology with state power when necessary is the key to winning over ordinary Americans. Kirk praised Martin Luther King Jr. prior to December 2023, calling him a hero and a civil rights icon on separate occasions. However, in December that same year, he used a speech at America Fest to describe King as horrible, not a good person, and as someone admired only because he said something he didn't actually believe in. In the same speech, Kirk also condemned the Civil Rights Act of 1964, calling its passage a huge mistake and claiming that it had created a permanent DI-type bureaucracy. Kirk told the New York Times, "I take the Caldwellian view from his book The Age of Entitlement, that we went through a new founding in the 1960s, and that the Civil Rights Act has actually replaced the U.S. Constitution as its reference point. In fact, I bet that if you surveyed Americans, most would have more reverence for the Civil Rights Act than for the Constitution. I could be wrong, but I think I'm right." In January 2024, Kirk claimed that a myth had been created around King that had grown totally out of control, and that King was currently the most honored, revered, even deified person of the 20th century, despite most people supposedly not appreciating him during his lifetime. In response to Malcolm Kenyatta's accusations that he was working to undermine King and the Voting Rights Act, Kirk called this claim a lie and alarmist, adding that telling the truth about King should not be treading on sacred ground, as he was just a man very flawed at that and an anti-racist mythological creation of the 60s. Kirk later said that by criticizing King, he had found the sacred cow of modern America. Also in January 2024, Kirk blamed DI programs for the nation's aviation woes, saying, "If I see a black pilot, I'm going to think, I hope he's qualified." He had previously spoken out against DI programs, describing them as anti-white. NBC News further reported that Kirk's comments about DI programs and African-American pilots led to an ongoing conflict with the Republican National Committee over voter outreach efforts. On September 9, 2025, speaking about the unprovoked murder of a Ukrainian refugee woman in Charlotte, North Carolina, Kirk accused Democrats of spreading a false narrative that there's a relentless assault on black people by white people, and stated that white individuals are actually more likely to be attacked, especially even per capita, by black individuals in this country. Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Kirk showed great support for Israel. During a 2019 visit to Jerusalem, he told an audience, "I'm very pro-Israel and I've stood up for Israel my whole life." In April 2024, he backed Republicans' crackdown on pro-Palestinian protests on college campuses. Kirk often approved of Israel's conduct of the Gaza war, for example, denying that it was causing starvation among Palestinians. However, in April 2025, he dismissed the Trump administration's efforts to punish pro-Palestinian students on campuses as an attack on free speech, saying, "Once anti-Semitism becomes valid grounds for censoring or even imprisoning someone, there will be frantic efforts to label all kinds of speech as anti-Semitic, in the same way that the left labeled all kinds of statements as racist, to justify silencing its opposition." Shortly after the October 7, 2023, attacks on Israel, Kirk promoted a conspiracy theory alleging that the Israeli government knew Hamas was going to launch the attack, and that Benjamin Netanyahu allowed it to happen as part of a plan to stay in power. In June 2025, Kirk opposed U.S. involvement in the Iran-Israel war. In May 2025, Kirk expressed opposition to a bipartisan proposal that would expand anti-BDS laws, which punish boycotts of Israel, stating that the bill would only breed more anti-Semitism and reinforce growing narratives that Israel controls the United States government. Several Israeli politicians and activists mourn Kirk's death, many describing him as a friend of Israel and some linking his passing to anti-Zionist activism. American Jews. Although Kirk always strongly supported Israel, he was sometimes accused of anti-Semitism, following widespread criticism of Elon Musk for endorsing an anti-Semitic post that referenced the Great Replacement theory and blamed Jewish communities for supporting mass migration. Kirk defended Musk, stating that Jewish communities have been promoting exactly the kind of anti-white hatred they claim to want people to stop using against them. Kirk added that it was completely correct that the philosophical basis of anti-whiteness has been largely funded by Jewish donors in the country, praising Tucker Carlson's statements on the subject. In July 2025, Kirk warned his followers against Jew hatred, calling it evil and demonic. He has stated that he has defended Israel all his life. Activism in school boards. In May 2021, she tweeted urging parents to protest school board meetings, urging them to stand up and oppose mask mandates and the teaching of critical race theory. LGBTQ issues. According to a 2024 NBC News report, Kirk was relatively friendly towards LGBTQ issues in 2018, but later shifted sharply towards anti-LGBTQ rights positions. Kirk stated that there is an LGBTQ agenda and opposed marriage equality. In 2024, he criticized YouTuber Ms. Rachel for posting in support of LGBT people on Pride Day. According to Media Matters, Kirk spoke out against gender-affirming care for trans people, saying, "We must ban trans-affirming care nationwide. Donald Trump needs to address this in his campaign." Kirk claimed that there are only two genders and that transgenderism and gender fluidity are lies that harm people and abuse children. Islam. Zohar Mamdani's victory in the 2025 Democratic primary for mayor of New York City. Kirk posted that 24 years ago, a group of Muslims killed 2,753 people on September 11th. Now, a Muslim socialist is on his way to running New York City. Liberal Fox News commentator Jessica Tarlov called on Kirk to remove the post, calling it disgusting and Islamophobic. In another post, Kirk argued that it is not Islamophobia to note that Muslims want to import values into the West that seek to destabilize our civilization. In early 2018, Kirk spoke at the annual conference of the anti-Muslim group ACT for America, an organization with multiple ties to Turning Point USA. In 2023, Kirk called for the Somali-born Congresswoman Ilhan Omar was deported. 90. Immigration. At an event at Missouri State University in 2023, he stated that immigration to the United States should be stopped completely. In the run-up to the 2024 presidential election, he promoted the false claim that Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, were eating residents' pets and other wildlife. Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia views on the Russo-Ukrainian War. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Kirk called the war a border dispute and spread false claims from Russian state media that Ukrainian forces were firing mortar shells at a Russian separatist enclave in Ukraine during the Donbass War. Kirk suggested that Russia might not have invaded Ukraine if Ukrainian citizens were well-armed and the country had strong gun rights like the United States. However, he opposed the U.S. sending weapons to Ukraine or assisting the country financially. In August 2025, Kirk said he disagreed with Trump's decision to send more military aid to Ukraine, stating, "We were against it under Biden. Why would we be for it now, unless it leads to a peace deal?" Prior to Russian invasion, he called Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a CIA puppet and claimed that eastern Ukraine historically belongs to Russia. Kirk believed the U.S. was wrong to consider Russia an enemy, although he said he disliked the Russian Federation and the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. At the February 2022 Conservative Policy Action Conference, Kirk stated that the southern border matters far more than the Ukrainian border, and that, in fact, I want every Republican leader who comes on stage in the next few days to call what's happening at the southern border an invasion, because 2 million people came into our country last year. Personal life. In May 2021, Charlie Kirk married Erica Frantzva, an entrepreneur, podcaster, and philanthropist who won the Miss Arizona USA pageant in 2012. The couple's first child was born in August 2022. The second child, a boy, was born in May 2024. Religious beliefs. Kirk was an evangelical Christian. The Christian congregation to which Charlie Kirk belonged was a Calvary Chapel Association. Before the early 2020s, Kirk was described as secular and critical of religious influence in politics and the state. "We have separation of church and state, and we should support it," Kirk told Dave Rubin in 2018. In 2021, Kirk partnered with California pastor Rob McCoy to launch the Pews of Faith, aiming to mobilize conservative Christians to vote Republican. Kirk's shift was influenced by events such as the Trump administration's relocation of the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem and COVID-19-era church closures, which he and his allies framed as religious persecution. Christian nationalism. Following his shift from secularism to Christianity, Kirk was described as a Christian nationalist who advocated for an end to the separation of church and state in the United States. In 2024, Kirk stated, "One of the reasons we're going through a constitutional crisis is that we no longer have a Christian nation, but a Christian form of government, and they're incompatible. You can't have liberty if you don't have a Christian population." During a Trump campaign rally that same year, he declared, "This is a Christian state. I'd like to keep it that way." Kirk promoted the Seven Mountain Mandate, a dominion theology concept that calls for Christians to control 7 areas of society: government, education, media, arts and entertainment, business, family, and religion. In a previous interview, Kirk stated that he wanted to be remembered for having courage for his faith. Murder. On September 10, 2025, Kirk was shot while speaking and debating from a tent with students at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. He responded to a question about the number of mass shootings committed by transgender people prior to the shooting. He was specifically asked, "Do you know how many mass shootings there have been in the United States in the last 10 years?" To which Kirk replied, "Counting gang violence or not," which was the time he was shot. The New York Times called it a sad coincidence that has fueled online conspiracy theories and speculation, and Kozak later said, "I couldn't have asked a worse question." He was reportedly shot in the neck about 20 minutes after the event began. The shot was fired from a building approximately 130 meters away on campus at 12:10 p.m. A university spokesperson later reported that a male suspect was taken into police custody. However, it was determined that the suspect was not the shooter. The murder went viral on social media, as multiple people were recording the event at the time of the murder. Later, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, announced on his social network Truth Social the death of Kirk. On September 12, 2025, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson was arrested as the prime suspect in the murder after being turned in by his father.